She collapsed without warning, right there in the glass and marble lobby where power usually walked with confidence. 1 second the billionaire CEO was speaking sharply into his phone, the next her words dissolved into air, her knees buckled, and the world tilted. Before anyone else reacted, a pair of rough, trembling arms caught her. The janitor, badge crooked, mop still in hand, held the most powerful woman in the building as if she weighed nothing at all. Daniel Reyes hadn't planned to be a hero that morning. He was a single father running on 3 hours of sleep, worried about whether his son's asthma inhaler would last the week and whether he could stretch his paycheck far enough to cover rent. He was just doing what he always did, cleaning floors no one noticed, staying invisible. But when he felt her collapse into him, instinct took over. He lowered her carefully to the floor, ignored the startled shouts around him, and checked her breathing with hands that had once learned first aid in a very different life. The woman in his arms was Evelyn Cross, the CEO whose name was carved into the building itself. Newspapers called her ruthless, untouchable. Daniel only saw a human being turning pale, her pulse fluttering dangerously under his fingers. He shouted for someone to call an ambulance and loosened the tight silk scarf around her neck. When a security guard hesitated, protocol, titles, fear, Daniel snapped, "She doesn't have time." Something in his voice cut through the room. As they waited, memories flooded Daniel's mind, memories of a life before night shifts and broken dreams. He had once been a paramedic, years ago, before his wife's illness drained their savings and her death shattered his world. He'd left the job to be home more, to care for his son Mateo. One bad turn after another had led him here, pushing a mop through hallways that echoed with wealth he could no longer imagine. But the training never left him. He monitored Evelyn's breathing, kept her airway clear, spoke to her softly even when her eyes fluttered shut. When the ambulance arrived, Daniel rode along without asking permission. He didn't notice the stunned looks or the whispers. At the hospital, he stayed until the doctors took over, then quietly slipped away, thinking his role in the story was finished. Heroes like him didn't get thanked. They just went back to work. Evelyn Cross woke up hours later with a splitting headache and a memory of falling into darkness. The doctors told her she'd suffered a sudden cardiac episode, one that would have killed her if she hadn't received immediate help. "You were lucky," one of them said. Someone acted fast. Evelyn frowned. Luck had never been part of her life. Control had. Yet this time, control had failed her. She demanded to know who had saved her. When they told her it was a janitor, just a janitor, she felt something unfamiliar twist in her chest. Gratitude, yes, but also shame. How many people like him passed through her building every day, invisible to her? Daniel returned to work the next night, exhausted and sore. His supervisor warned him not to overstep boundaries again. At home, Mateo's cough worsened, and the pharmacy told Daniel the inhaler price had gone up. That night, he sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, wondering how much longer he could keep pretending everything was fine. 2 days later, he was called into a conference room he had only ever cleaned after meetings ended. Evelyn Cross was sitting at the table, alive, alert, and watching him closely. She stood when he entered, something no one in that building ever expected her to do. "You saved my life," she said simply. "And you disappeared." Daniel shrugged, uncomfortable. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Evelyn replied softly. "You did what you could do. And that matters." She had done her homework. She knew about his past as a paramedic, about his wife, about Mateo. For the first time in years, someone saw Daniel not as a uniform, but as a story. Evelyn offered him a job in the company's emergency preparedness division, training staff, improving response systems. It paid more than he'd ever earned since losing his wife. When Daniel hesitated, pride and fear warring inside him, she added, "This isn't charity. It's respect." Life didn't transform overnight, but it began to bend toward light. Mateo got his medicine without Daniel counting coins. Daniel worked days instead of nights, had dinner with his son, laughed again. And Evelyn changed too. She walked her building more slowly now, learned names, listened. Power, she realized, wasn't just about control, it was about care. Months later, Daniel stood in the same lobby where everything had changed. Sunlight streamed through the glass, and people moved with purpose and kindness that hadn't been there before. He watched Evelyn cross the floor, confident but human, and felt a quiet pride. A desperate move by a single dad had saved a billionaire's life, but it had also saved something in himself. Because sometimes, the greatest acts of courage come from the most overlooked hands. And when we choose to see one another, not titles, not status, but hearts, we don't just save lives. We change them.